One Piece chapter 1136 is here, and this one felt long, and I think it's because I don't think we had a single double spread in this entire chapter, and there was so much information. It was Elbaf lore, worldwide lore, lore about Nika. There was so much information that broadened a lot of different aspects, a lot to talk about in this chapter. First of all, I do find it interesting. They said that it's not often that humans come into the sun world because usually they enter through the underworld, think that that's all of Elbaf, and then they either flee or, they assume that the underworld is Elbaf and end up fleeing. Yeah, so they flee, or, as we know, maybe get trapped down there. Granted, the humans that we saw previously in the underworld were labeled as, I think it was criminals or lawbreakers who have been chucked down there as their punishment, so maybe they don't get trapped. Maybe they just turn around and leave right away. But that is interesting, especially since I've been speculating that there might be a human settlement. The reaction here makes me think that I'm probably wrong about that, but we'll see. So we get some trademark Straw Hats interacting with Elbaf here at the beginning, with Usopp lying and everybody buying into his lies and calling him Captain Usopp, him making up tales about how great he's been. We have Sanji being just very excited about the giant women. And then we have Brook singing, putting on a concert. What's your deal, skeleton man? Let me sing you a song instead of answering your very simple question. And then we have a lot of Roto in this chapter, and I'm gonna be honest, Roto's starting to look like a key point for establishing us in Elbaf, and I'm just really not happy about it. But what I am happy about is the role that Zoro played in this chapter when Roto is giving his kind of half-hearted apology. I'm super sorry, but also everybody here wants to be like a god, so like what's it matter that I caged you and imprisoned you and kidnapped you and had no intention of ever letting you free? It's okay because we all kind of want to be Sun God Nika, so my crimes are fine. All of that, I'm sorry, but also this is kind of like, I'm kind of enjoying all of the facets around this. And Zoro tells him, don't worry about it. Nobody died. But only because Usopp stopped me from fighting back. And then we get that close in on his face and he goes, if not for that, your head would have left your shoulders. I loved this scene for Zoro. I love him acting all nonchalant with Roto, like, you don't really affect me. I don't really care about what you've done because I will knock your head off if you try again. Like, I love that very calm, chill, let's be real clear about what's going to happen if you try something again. Let's be real clear about the order of power in this room right now. Between this scene and the scene with him and Luffy, I'm going to skip over that. Skip over all of this to get to the scene with him and Luffy. Daggone, this was a long chapter. Here we go. Where Luffy is stomping his feet, throwing his hands in the air, throwing an absolute fit about like, saying, but Loki knows about Shanks. You know how bad I want to see Shanks? And so it's like, yeah, we all know about it, but this is suspect. Like, I don't trust the guy. And so he really is trying to talk Luffy down, talk sense into him, and then eventually tells him, okay, I will help you find these keys, but I'm going to be a part of the decision making on what we do after that. I love him acting as the balance, and first the protector. He plays the protector in the group, and then he plays the balance to Luffy, which is also just more of him being a protector, protecting the crew from Luffy's potentially ill decision making. Now, I'm still in the camp that I think Loki is probably going to, I still think that he is the kind of character that you don't always know what side he's on, if he's going to be good or bad, kind of alongside the Norse mythological Loki. I still think that there's a lot to discover about him, and the build-up that we're getting about his character and his legend and all of this stuff, there's enough to speculate that we shouldn't be completely all in on the, oh yeah, you're totally a baddie. It's being a little bit, it's a little bit too strongly stated that he's the cursed prince, while also giving us enough nuance in the stories that we can kind of see, maybe not completely. So I'm still waiting to get more reveals. I'm sure most of us are. I don't know that I buy into he's all good. I really don't think that that's going to be what we're going to get out of Loki. I think he's probably going to end up in the gray area, but I do see him at the very least being an ally of sorts to our crew, but we'll just have to see. And actually, while we're here talking about what Zoro said, this is the scene that Tcen depicted for us this week. She really focused in on the fact that we have our first 3 Straw Hats together again, just the 3 of them on an adventure, this time focusing on the scale of this giant island that they're exploring together. Very, very nostalgic. She says she has plans for some future artwork for our new look at Sun God Nika. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it's just great to have Tcen back. As always, Tcen is linked in the description of this video, so please do go show her some love. But on a chapter that is focused on a lot of information, it's cool to have a moment to just appreciate our core original 3 together exploring. Okay, back to where we left off. When Roto was saying, super sorry about everything that I did, but also you don't understand, we all want to be like Sun God Nika, so actually it's kind of fine what I did. And then he said, we all wish to be the sun god and rule the world. And everyone else responds, no, 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 no. The sun god isn't a ruler. He's a god of liberation, a god of destruction, a god of laughter. So everyone wants to be like the sun god according to who they perceive the sun god to be. To Roto, he's a ruler, which is why he saw no problem with ruling his little caged humans, his little pets. But the next person thinks that he is a liberator. The next person thinks he's a destroyer. Watch that person. That giant's gonna do something bad. One of laughter. And they all agree, it seems, that they want to emulate the sun god, but they disagree of what exactly that looks like. And that's because they have this ancient text known as the Harley, and there are many interpretations of it. So the Harley is continuing to be passed down, but the original language, I guess, that it was written in is no longer recoverable. And so no one truly knows exactly what it says, except for a few key things, which is the world has already twice been destroyed in the past, which is interesting because we've only had one confirmation. But I also didn't find this very surprising because when the Atom Tree was first introduced to us, it's introduced as a tree that an island of people, a group of people has built their island and their civilization around, but because of warfare and because of destruction, it's been destroyed a few times, but they continue to gather around that tree. So to me, first of all, it's never been clarified that the world has been destroyed only once before. But second of all, the Atom Tree was a pretty good clue, I think, that the world has been destroyed more than once, or that the destruction of near the entire world has been destroyed more than once. But the other bit of lore that we got is that in each case, the presence of Nika, the sun god, is closely tied to it. Is he the hero who appeared to save the world from disaster? The destroyer who lays waste to it all? He appears when the world is about to undergo a great transformation. Therefore, the great and mighty of the day always fear Nika's arrival. So this is really interesting because everything that we just learned makes sense as to why there would be multiple concepts of who Nika is. I think each of these very easily slot into what we already know. We already know him as the god of laughter, or rather, we know that laughter overtakes Luffy when he takes this form. We already know that liberation is a big part of Luffy's dream and that it's a big part of what he accomplishes everywhere he goes. It makes sense that this would be a part of the sun god Nika fruit as well. And then destruction really isn't that surprising to me either, especially if this devil fruit lays dormant until it's needed again, until the destruction of the world is coming again, and then it appears, it makes sure to appear before its next owner is going to be, or however that all plays out. We already know that Joy Boy had that big apology that he left for the fishmen, and that he was involved in, or involved around the last destruction of the earth. So it's really not surprising that that this devil fruit maybe lays dormant, or intentionally the devil fruits have already kind of, there's been some clues that they have a will of their own of sorts. So if it evades being eaten until the time that it's needed, and each time Sun God Nika is a part of this great destiny that plays out, or a part of disputing those that would try to conquer everything as the fruit of liberation and of laughter and of destruction is tied to it, because in the past, maybe the previous owners weren't able to actually accomplish protecting the world from that destruction, and so destruction has been tied to the lore of the fruit. So it just kind of makes sense to me, each of these depictions that the giants seem to have about what the fruit represents, what the sun god represents, that it would be something that they've picked from history and then decided this is the whole of what the sun god is. But each of their pictures of the sun god is true. It's just that each is a fracture of it instead of the whole of it like they think it is. Am I making sense? Like, sun god Nika clearly is the embodiment of laughter and liberation. Destruction certainly does follow the history and the lore left behind. And a ruler certainly makes sense as well, because people naturally fall in line with, follow after someone as strong, as powerful, and as much of, at least it seems like, someone who is trying to help and isn't always accomplishing that. And Luffy will likely be the one that accomplishes it this time and actually fulfills the promise that Joy Boy couldn't. But also, because of human nature, you know, the pattern will continue on. There will still be those that gain power and use it for their own self-promotion and world domination. And once again, this devil fruit will be needed in order to continue to balance the scales and protect the world. So the cycle will continue, because human nature will continue until the world is successfully destroyed. But this time, we're going to watch Luffy be the one that hopefully succeeds. Sometimes the carrier of this fruit will fail, and sometimes they will succeed. I imagine we're succeeding. But we did, along with this, I don't want to breeze past the fact that we did get Elbaf lore here too, knowing that they have these ancient texts that are passed down that they haven't been able to fully translate, but they can get pieces out of it, and they seem to be holding onto fractures and calling it the whole, which I think once they see Luffy in action, then they'll realize that each of their ideas of who the sun god was, they'll see he is that, but he's also that, and he's also that. And they'll get a more holistic idea of this legend that their culture, that their island, that their people have carried all these years. So I think that that's going to be a really big part of the Elbaf Island as well, is having those texts be restored or fulfilled or enlightened. I also saw somebody mention how funny it is that the different translations is something that's fixated on in this chapter, and that's like what the fans of One Piece are about, is squabbling over the different translations. We also got the observation that even Loki is potentially the result of attempting to be like Nika, which is very possible. They don't even want to humanize his intentions to the point of giving him that kind of explanation. They just think he's just bad. He's just plain evil. There's no noble or relatable reason for him to do anything that he does. He's just all bad. And from here, we also learn more Elbaf lore, which is that he was the accursed prince, or at least believed to be so, even before he was born, that there was a prophecy on his life that he would eventually be the one to kill his own father. And then as soon as he was born, bad things started happening. Or more likely, bad things have always happened in the world. And as soon as he was born, the people of Elbaf started attributing those bad things to him. So I am curious, because, you know, we had the horse and then we had his mom die, which is super great when you blame a child for that kind of thing. But his mom died shortly after he was born. And then it went from bad things were happening around him and we blamed him to he started doing bad things. So I am curious how much of this is going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of storyline around him, where everyone just attributed everything to him because they already decided before he was born that he was accursed. And because of that, he was like, you want me to be accursed? Okay, I'll be accursed. Here you go, wild beast. On you. You deserve it. You want a fire? Okay, there you go. It would have been my fault anyway, so let's just make it happen. You know what I mean? Like, how much of this is Loki just being what everyone already told him, you're destined to be this no matter what. So he's just like, fine. I'll be your bad guy. We definitely did get the Gear 5th, you know, hand over the eyes laughing pose from Loki, which is also a pretty good indicator that he's not just pure evil like what the legends are telling us that he is. It reminds me a lot of Odin and how he was built up at the beginning of Wano. It reminds me a lot of Jinbei and how he was built up before we met him. It reminds me a lot of Kuma and how he was built up before we learned his true backstory. So there's been a lot of look at the legend of this horrible person, and then we meet them and we realize all of the nuance behind those legends that have been perpetuated. So I think we're gonna get something very similar with Loki. Oh, also, I just want to note this, and I know that it's probably nothing, but I did just recently reread the chapters of when Big Mom was on Elbaf for my Elbaf video, which you should totally check out because I really loved putting together all the cultural and lore stuff that we know so far and see what we can assume is going to come of the themes of this arc out of the clues that we've gotten so far. Also, there's a hand-drawn map in that video that is just excellent. And then there's also mine, but you know, there's a good one in there too. And I wonder if, because in those chapters, we don't actually see Big Mom start any fires, we just see her in front of the fires, and those fires are attributed to her. And I'm just saying that what we see in this panel of the fires and of the houses, it looks really similar to what we see back then. So I am curious if Loki started that fire and then Big Mom got blamed. Now, don't hear me wrong. Big Mom was a terror herself, so it's very possible that she just did it. But it would be a really cool surprise to find out that all this time it was actually Loki that did it, and Big Mom maybe didn't actually deserve to be kicked off of Elbaf. I mean, that would add an extra layer of tragedy to her story. And if they found that out and then Big Mom did come back to Elbaf again, as people are speculating, she might actually be welcomed in if they realize, oh, you didn't even do that. That wasn't even actually your fault. I don't know, just a thought. It's probably not gonna happen, but I thought it, so I said it. Okay, so I know this is dumb, but my favorite part of this entire chapter, even though Zoro is a close second, the role that Zoro played is a close second, but my favorite part of this entire chapter is that this gag continued. Where the guy is pointing and he goes, Chief Jurel, or however you say it, was there and tried to stop Loki. That's what got him stabbed in the head. And he goes, this helmet saved my life. And Luffy's like, the helmet didn't do anything. I love this gag so much. The fact that the sword is run completely through his head and he's still just like, no, the helmet totally saved my life. And it's like, none of this makes sense. And it's my favorite gag in a while. Oh, I'll also mention, because someone's gonna say this, I'll also mention that obviously the fire that we're seeing in this chapter, it's saying Loki did this. So I'm not saying that if Loki is responsible for the Big Mom fire, that's the only fire he ever caused. Obviously, he caused another fire if he is responsible for the Big Mom fire. So I'm saying that those are two different fires. I'm just saying that the imagery draws me back to the Big Mom fire, so it's possible that that was intentional as like a tiny little clue of, you know, be thinking about this, because maybe, I mean, it's probably nothing. Anyway, the final thing that happened in this chapter is that the fake Shanks and the girl who we actually get the name from, a name of, I guess you would say Gunko would be how you would pronounce it. We actually get her name and we see them in front of Loki, and Loki is saying, absolutely not, no way am I working with you. You think I'm going to spend the one life I have stooping to the level of trash? So it is interesting because he asked them, are you God Knights? Which makes me think that this is definitely not Shanks, because I do think that Loki would remember what Shanks, like, I think he would remember Shanks' hockey, because I forgot to mention this early in the chapter, we also find out that Shanks was the one that captured Loki when Loki was causing all this destruction, when he was being such a terror to the Elbaf society. Shanks was the one that caught him at sea and returned him to Elbaf. So I do think that Loki would remember what Shanks felt like because they had such a close encounter, and because Loki's gonna hold that grudge. I mean, obviously, he was slandering Shanks at the very beginning, but the fact that he's asking, what are you, celestial dragons, makes me think that this is potentially confirming that this definitely is not Shanks. Potentially, definitely. Anyway, we see Gungo actually use her powers again, but this time we get a more clear look at it, and one of my patrons pointed out to me that the spike thing, arrow thing that she's using is very reminiscent of what Emu used in the throne room to kill King Cobra. So that's fascinating. She's clearly turning her clothes into these bandages that we saw in action last time to break the bones, I guess, of that one giant guard. And now she's strangling the doggo, but we see that the arrow is the tip of these bandages that she's able to manipulate. Watching her in action is pretty cool. Seeing her like use her fingers to tie up the doggo and then point up to make the bandages go high. It is really cool to see her in action. So I do hope that we get a good amount more of her and we get to understand more of why. I mean, obviously we're going to understand more of why they're here and what their goal truly is, but I also just love the ruthlessness of Loki here. Your fate is sealed, my friend. Die and be at peace. A warrior doesn't quibble and whine about his way of death. Instead, I'll feed on this rage and use it to bring the world to ruin. That is such a great line to end the chapter on, and I do love Loki's chaos. His ruthlessness, his desire for, I want to say justice, because I think it was the last chapter when he was talking on the phone with someone and he was like, no, I would make people pay for the way they're acting. And then here he is saying, I'm not budging. I'm not siding with you. I'm not working with you. But I will use this to fuel my rage and we'll talk again. It's just like, oh, it's so intense. Despite the fact that Loki is chained up and has been in the same place, unable to move since we met him, he's still really living up to this intimidating, violent legend that he has. We just need to know for sure what his motivations are. If he truly is pure evil, I'm gonna guess not, or if there's more to him than that, but he's still gonna be violent. He still seems pretty intense. So far, I'm really loving his character though. So that's the chapter, that's what we learned and what we explored. It was a lot of information with only a little bit of movement, but still so much to discuss. So I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is going on here? What do you think I missed? Please do chat with me more in the comments. I'll see you again soon. Bye.